Hey, I'm Christopher McClure from Wholeness Geeks, and welcome to Meditation Happy Hour, where I share meditations, practices, perspectives, processes, um, both traditional and modern. And today I'm going to share about uh, something I've been doing for a while now, a few decades, but how that applies to something very specific. And what that thing is that I've been doing for several decades is when I when a person who is close to me dies, I enter into a conversation with them during the 3 week period after they've died. That 3 week period is a window of opportunity for communication. Um, and sometimes you can have better communication with somebody during that period than you can when they were actually alive. If there was like you know tension between you and that person. Um, the reason that's true is because when a person dies, their body falls away, but their emotional nature and their mental nature are still there. They're they're non-physical in terms of actual physical matter, but they're still there. Um, but they are in the process of dissolving, and that's why there's just a 3 week window, because after the 3 weeks, it's started to dissolve, unless there's something kind of troubling going on with the person, and where they might actually become like a ghost, and hang around in those emotional and mental bodies. But for most people, it's after 3 weeks, it's significantly dissolved, and then they move beyond the reach of human interaction. But that time period is the reason for you know having communication. One is of course, just that you would want to um, see how they're doing, and maybe find out things about about them, or have them tell you things about you, or the circumstances in your current world situation. The other reason is that you can actually help them transition. You can, by asking the right questions, you can help them create a trajectory in terms of where they're going. I believe in reincarnation, and so that 3 week period is, while there's still an emotional and mental body, it's it's an opportunity for the spirit to create a trajectory into their future lifetime. And if by you asking the right questions, you can help them uh, have clarity with their intention. Now, this practice, which I just explained, um, as applied to somebody who's committed suicide, becomes a little more um, intense, and um, there's a bit more rigor involved in dealing with that situation. And because very often the person who has committed suicide is very troubled, and they may be thinking that, you know, taking their life is a solution to the problems that they were facing in their physical life, but I believe that it's actually not a solution, because you have less when you're alive. You have the ability, you have the physical, you have the ability to take a breath, um, to bring focus and attention and will to whatever it is that's going on in your being, in your human experience. And when you die, you lose that. You have less ability to actually um, problem solve and grow. So that when a person takes their life, there's often confusion and dismay, and um, so the need for help is even greater. And but um, there's, as I will explain, there's it gets a little more treacherous in terms of dealing with that person's energy. Um, so one of the things that you can do just off the bat is, there's a practice that I've been doing for uh, decades. It's from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. It's called Tong Lin. And essentially what it is breathing in negativity and breathing out neutrality. Uh, and, most people, when they do any kind of breathing, and in terms of healing or improving their situation, they think about breathing in the good and breathing out the bad. Um, this is a bodhisattva practice. Bodhisattva meaning a person who has dedicated themselves the um, to the upliftment of all humanity. So it's kind of an opposite um, intention than the usual kind of human self-preservation. But it's important to realize that Tong Lin, if somebody just kind of jumps into Tong Lin, they're probably not going to be able to sustain that practice, that intention, very well. Um, Tong Lin is usually an auxiliary practice to another practice called Shamatha Vipassana. And Shamatha Vipassana is an out-breath meditation. And it's just an out-breath meditation. So you spend a lot of time meditating and just focusing on the out-breath. And it's like you're developing a muscle. And that muscle to just, breathe um, out into space and create spaciousness and neutrality is, it's like a bank account, and you're just putting money in this bank account. And then when you turn around and start breathing in negativity, it's like you can draw on that bank account to with the assurance that when you breathe out, there is going to be neutrality, because you've built up that muscle. So this is actually what I'm suggesting is I guess it's a composite. It's, two practices, and it's not just something to kind of dip your feet into. It's something to develop over time, but it can become a very useful tool for when there's negativity in your life, and especially if you've had somebody close to you commit suicide. You can actually breathe in what their situation and breathe out neutrality, and you're actually helping to transform the energy, energetic landscape that they've created for themselves. Um, it's also so we come to the with the situation of suicide, we come to the the um, the dichotomy or the polarity of this bodhisattva intention, this intention to um, help, to kind of uh, like a firefighter, like putting their life on the line to help people who might be trapped in a building. Um, there's that intention, and then there's the the need for self-preservation. If a firefighter isn't isn't properly equipped and isn't isn't doesn't have the skills and the strategy to do what to save people well, then they're going to die, and then they're not useful to anybody, including themselves. Um, so there's this kind of like, how do you hold that dichotomy there of wanting to help and self-preservation. Um, One way that I found for myself um, to do that is, and this is a general practice, this is not a practice I've developed for self-preservation, it's just a practice that I do in general. It's it's a meditation, a four element meditation I call the soul kernel. And essentially what it is you put your mind in your dantian, which is the physical center of the body, 3 fingers below the navel, 3 fingers in, and then you feel the pulse there. Now, pulse is a body cycle. It can be a meditation object, the same way breath can be a meditation object, in the same way that you can experience breath anywhere in the body. Also, like with sensation, you can experience sensation anywhere of the body. Pulse is kind of like a subset of sensation, and you can experience it anywhere in the body. Anyway, you experience, you focus on the dantian, you feel the pulse there. Okay, so that's element 2. Element 3 is the 6-pointed star, the Star of David, the Seal of Solomon, the interlacing triangles. Um, and the interlacing triangles, there's 6 sides, right? There's an upward facing triangle, and you got the bottom, right, left. Then you got the downward facing triangle, bottom, right, left. So that symbol is actually a symbol of balance. It's the upward is evolution, and the downward is involution, and where they come together is actually heaven on earth. It's a balance and a perfection, and that symbol is in a sense a perfection, because it can't be manipulated into something else. Any way you turn it, it's still the 6-pointed star. Anyway, down in the dantian with the pulse, if you allow the pulse to move your attention around the sides of the triangle, that becomes a yantra, right? A yantra is a repeating visual sim, uh, symbol. And so that's element 3. Element 4 is a mantra, which is a repeating sound, and the mantra here is Om Mani Padme Hum. You entrain the movement around the sides of the triangle with the pulse and the dantian. You entrain that to Om Mani Padme Hum, which means the whole universe is found in the center of my being. So that's the soul kernel, and that practice in itself is it's a balancing practice, but it acts as a self-preservation practice also. And so it's important to, if you're dealing with a person who has committed suicide and you're trying to help them psychically, it's important to have that kind of protection and grounding. And there's lots of other kinds of protections and grounding, and this is just one. Um, what I found recently with a particular person who I knew not very well, but a person who I know was his neighbor, was her person that I know. The person who committed suicide was her neighbor, her neighbor, and so I felt kind of involved with his passing, his taking of his life, and so I entered into a conversation with him, and at first he was what I'm about to impart is that I experienced stages of his transition, um, which I was kind of surprised actually by some of the shifts. The first one was of regret, like he wanted to, have me impart the message to this person that I know that he was sorry. He was very sorry for for leaving his dog, and for just not being a very positive influence in their neighborhood. Um, but then it shifted into this kind of arrogance, kind of like, huh, yeah, I got out of that, that pain that I was having in that life, in my life, and then it kind of turned. It was starting to turn kind of malicious, and that's when I started to be concerned about my self-preservation. But I didn't want to, just kind of like turn my back. I mean, this is something I do, and I feel like I have a sense of principle about it, and I didn't want to. So I've been holding the polarity of, this intention and self-preservation. Um, and then at that point, I'm part of a prayer group, and I brought the focus of him into our prayer group and sent a lot of forgiveness energy to him. And there was a big shift there where it's kind of like he really kind of sobered up, and felt a lot of regret, um, and then the last stage was that it kind of evened out, and uh, a much more sober um, perspective of what he had done, and where and what he had available to to him, in terms of how to where to go, and to how to work with what the situation that he had created. And that's I I I may have had an influence in terms of um, that sobering of perspective, because I believe I brought in the realization of how much less agency you have when you're to actually work with your stuff, when you're not alive. That you have much more agency when you actually are alive. Um, so those are just some things about how to how to help energetically, how to take care of yourself, how to recognize stages. I'm not saying these stages are the same for everybody, but I'm just saying that there are stages. But then the real work of helping can come about through some questions that you can ask. First question you can ask is, where are you? What is it like there? I think very often, when we're suffering, when a person is suffering, we tend to become very kind of subjective and contracted, and we're just feeling and seeing our own stuff, and we don't even recognize where we are or what's around us. And so just to ask that question brings some objectivity to consciousness. The next question is, what do you regret? Right? So you can just right away focus on the what's probably the predominant negative feelings that are up, and to just get a sense of what they are, to name them, to label them. Um, but then, to keep some sense of balance, and not just dig into the negativity, to ask, what are you grateful for? It's like there's always things that you're grateful for, regardless. Um, and to bring that, it just kind of keeps more of a balanced perspective. The next question you can ask is, how would you do things differently? Which is, after assessing what you regret, it's like, okay, well, what can I learn from this? Um, and this starts to feed into where are you going? And this is the real crux of how you help somebody, regardless of whether they have taken their life or they just died naturally, is where are you going? And I've when my father died, I entered into conversation with him, and he was a machinist and an auto mechanic, so he and a craftsman. He was um, had Czechoslovakian heritage, and there's just a lot of like craftsman energy, working with your hands, and so he had a lot of agency with his hands. But where he wanted to go was, he wanted to take that into another level, which was, he wanted to become a surgeon, right? He wanted to use the use of his hands for something that was kind of a higher purpose, more helpful, directly helpful to people. Um, and I believe I helped him realize that direction just by asking, having conversation and asking that question. Um, and then another question that you can ask, which is just it's basically just a good question, is, what do you love about yourself? Right? So you can actually, um, there's always something to love about. There's always good qualities. People, even bad people have good qualities, and so to just keep a, a holistic perspective, which is kind of the next question too, which is, in the light of wholeness, where are you? What piece of the puzzle, the puzzle of your wholeness, what piece of the puzzle are you presently, or what, this lifetime that you've just experienced, where does that fit in? So it brings in a much broader view of um, of your soul, and of your lifetimes moving forward, your evolution. So yeah, those are the questions you can ask. And oh, and then the actually, I skipped one. Um, you can ask the person, you can ask them, are there any messages? And this question can go both ways. In other words, are there any messages? Are there any people, any guides, any entities that are giving you messages that might be good for you to recognize what they are, and to ask yourself. Um, and then it can also be, do you have any messages for anybody in the world? So then you, as the person who's having the conversation with the deceased can be a liaison to deliver a message. Like in the case with this I just explained, the message, the initial message was, I'm so sorry for everything. Um, so that's it basically. This I'm Christopher McClure from Wholeness Geeks, and um, if you would like to make any comments or suggestions, or even share any of your own processes and meditations, practices, perspectives, you can join the Wholeness Geeks Facebook group. Uh, so this has been Meditation Happy Hour, and I've been talking to you about the practice of entering into conversation with people who have died in that 3 week period after they've died, and especially in very today focus especially on people who have committed suicide. So thanks for watching and listening.